Okay, so a little bit about Leigh Hunt. He essentially was the organizer of English Romanticism. Hey, good to finally see you. Anyways, he was the guy who interconnected everybody to everybody else. He was the guy about town. He knew everybody in all of these different circles. The affluent circles that existed at the time, with the merchant class. He was very familiar with the aristocracy, familiar as in friendly, and a participant in their activities. And he was also very popular on the streets. And he was probably at the time the dandy about town. He was always well dressed. He loved the greatest scotches, but he also was able to swill a few bad beers. But anyways, what he did is he was an organizational genius, in my opinion. And he got all of these guys and gals together. Matter of fact, he's the one who introduced some of them who would eventually go on and marry each other. But he never did. He was never able and never that lucky in his own life. So anyways, so he was educated at the Christ School. And he was considered by his teachers to be very precocious, and he began writing very young. He was about 6, and his early writings are in a fairly large volume. He wrote from about age 6 to about 13, and they all exist. And then his diaries are in there as well, talking about love lost, love found. How great British society had been, and that it's going towards its death. And remember the concept of Romanticism. Romanticism was not only talking about present-day individual aspects of life, the breaking down. And remember, this is a period of time when everything was so tight. This is pre-Victorian. The breaking down of individual ties, and saying, you know, we can all come together, and we can share resources and friendships. It doesn't have to be the aristocracy only hanging out with the aristocracy. But what he also did is he was able to bring together this concept that the romance of the past, the romance of history, are a positive. You know, everybody was very progressive at the time, looking forward, and not recognizing the positives of the history, as opposed to always looking at the negatives. So anyways, he's the one who introduced Keats to Shelley, as well as Mary to Percy. He was the one who encouraged Browning and Tennyson and Dickens, to write. He said to Tennyson, he said, both of them, Albert and George, he said, look, you're never going to be able to get out of your bubble, because these were guys who said, we're stuck and we want something more. And Leigh Hunt said, you can have it all and still be who you are. You know, and think about the fears. I mean, today we're in the 21st century where cats are living with dogs. Just making sure he's paying attention. So it's a wild world. And here we are, starting with a very progressive view of life. And it was this man who was able to bring this forward. And what he wanted to initially call the British Romantics was the Cockney School, because, like I said, he was a man of the streets as well, and he really liked that whole blue collar, get in your face attitude. There's an advantage to it. Instead of being stodge and sit back and let the world go by. So anyways, later on in life, one of the people who really would later push his agenda was Virginia Woolf. And really she is one of his, what he left behind, one of his proteges, as well as getting the whole damn thing organized. So, anyways, because he hung around with the captains of industry and members of parliament and the aristocracy, he had a hard time keeping up appearances, and he died broke. And it was the Tennysons that saved him from being destitute and living on the streets. So you get to understand how close-knit this group of people were. So I think we're going to move on to George Gordon Byron.
Jean, 'tis Jean, this dream's where you belong.